let's bring in our NBC News Nation political panel. Elleithee is Democratic strategist and former spokesman for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. David Winston is a Republican strategist who's working with the Gingrich team, and Ann Kornbluth is a White House reporter for the Washington Post. Are you all there with us?
Yep. Good afternoon.
Okay, I can't see you guys, so I'm going to assume that you are all there. There you go. We were having a little technical problem there. We apologize. And let me start off with you, because what I find so intriguing, and I always do, with these people who say they're undecided, 41% of those who will likely participate in the caucus say that they cannot pick between these candidates, despite how much we know, good and bad, about all of them.
It's a really big number, and we'll see, actually, once we get to tomorrow and we actually do some exit polling, we'll see whether that number was really true. We sometimes see, especially in Iowa and New Hampshire, where voters can be a little cantankerous, that they say they're undecided because they want to throw the pollsters for a loop, and they do actually deep down inside know who they're going to vote for. But I think in this case, it's actually indicative of how tumultuous this field has been the whole time, and how it's really been anyone's race. This last-minute surge by Rick Santorum is further proof of that. I mean, the way things have been, there's still time for Santorum to fall, and who knows, maybe Huntsman is next.
Yeah. David, let me bring you in on this.
Yep.
We just heard our campaign embed covering Mitt Romney say that Romney has not until today mentioned the name of Rick Santorum. He'd set his sights on President Obama. He's been told that he's the inevitable pick for the GOP, but now he's got this person he's got to get through, at least if you want to talk about momentum going out of Iowa. What do you think of this Rick Santorum factor here now?
Well, it's not particularly surprising. Again, what Governor Romney has tended to do is focus on whoever the leading Republican is in terms of trying to win that conservative side of the nomination process, and focus just a lot of firepower. I mean, Newt has gone through, what, $5 million of negative advertising, most of that coming from Mitt Romney. And now, you see Rick Santorum sort of move up the scale a little bit, and he's going to come under fire as well. I mean, but part of that, going back to what Ann was saying, I mean, what we're still seeing here is this electorate is very fluid. They've been all over the map. 40%, according to the Des Moines Register poll, said they're still thinking through their decision. So, I mean, we still, 24 hours could be a really long time here.
Fluid, or is it flawed? I want to read a quote from the New York Times article today. Jeff Mullen is a politically active pastor, as he's referred to in the article, and he says there's no perfect candidate. The question is, what flaws can you put up with? So, David, I'll go back to this. Is it fluid or flawed?
No, it's fluid. Look, and going to the person's point, I mean, clearly there is no perfect candidate. I mean, that sort of individual does not exist, and so you're going to take the pluses and minuses. I would say, generally, looking at the Republican field, you're looking at candidates who have a lot more pluses than they do minuses. Obviously, in my case, I think Newt has more of those. But I think ultimately you're looking at a process of people trying to figure out who's got the best solutions.
I'm going to get Mo in a second, but David, I want to follow up with you. You bring up Newt Gingrich. He dropped 20 points in the poll. I want to play what he said, lowering expectations, pretty much throwing up the white flag, saying he's not going to win this caucus. Let me play what he had to say.
I don't think I'm going to win. I think if you look at the numbers, I think that volume of negativity has done enough damage.
Now, this is a man who's very confident. I mean, I think he referred to himself as an amateur paleontologist the other day. He said he's an amateur historian, and he really looks defeated, beat down. I thought he was a scrapper.
No, I think what you're saying is he's being realistic. Look, I mean, nobody has suffered the amount of negative ads in an Iowa caucus at the scale that Newt just went through it, right? And he's being somewhat realistic in terms of what the expectations are. Having said that, okay, now how do you move forward? How do you move forward to South Carolina and begin to engage there? And so you're thinking through the process of, okay, this is what happened in Iowa. Now what do you do in terms of being able to win the nomination?
Mo, let me bring you in. What are Democrats saying behind the scenes? We know the president is also focused, obviously, on what's happening in Iowa. What David refers to as fluid, but I will again say that some people call it flawed candidates that we're looking at here at this point.
Well, most of my friends in the Democratic Party are all saying this is one great show to watch.
Why is it great to watch?
This has been such a game of musical chairs. As one candidate rises and then stumbles and falls, and the next one takes their place, and then they fall. Newt's the latest one. And so it's just been a really interesting show to watch, but what we're not seeing really is a strong candidate articulating a vision for how to get the country moving again. The fact that you've got Ron Paul and Rick Santorum emerging as the alternatives to Mitt Romney in Iowa, two guys who are out there running as Tea Partiers and social conservatives, not talking about the economy, juxtaposed with the president who is out there talking about the economy. I like that contrast in the debate.
But Mo, you do have some of those undecideds out there who say, listen, I may like Ron Paul, I may even like some parts of Rick Perry's personality and resume, but with that said, they have resigned to the fact that if they want a chance to beat President Obama, Mitt Romney has to be the guy, that he has the ability perhaps to appeal to those independents there, that their heart might be with this guy on the right, but they're going to go with this other guy.
Well, what's interesting is that for the better part of a year now, Mitt Romney's poll numbers, both in each of the leading states, except for maybe New Hampshire, in each of the early states and as well as nationally, has never broken above 25% of Republicans. Republicans are not energized by this guy. I think his long record of flip-flopping and inconsistencies has made him questionable to even people in his own party, and I think that will come back and haunt him with a lot of those independent voters in the general election as well.
Let me bring back Ann into the conversation. Ann, you've got this Des Moines Register poll. We've been showing it throughout the day. Most electable in a general election. Mitt Romney there. I don't think it's a major surprise. 48%. Gingrich 13%. Ron Paul with 12%, which leads me into what Congressman Ron Paul had to say in an interview earlier about whether or not he is a fringe candidate or if he's only really appealing to maybe young people with great zeal but don't have a real handle on what it takes to win a general election. Let me play what he had to say.
I would say that I'm pretty mainstream. I think the people who are attacking me now are the ones who can't defend their records, and they've been all over the place.
He says he's mainstream. What in his resume proves that? Does anyone think that? I mean, you may like him, but to call him mainstream?
Well, that's obviously his take on who he is. We should remember one day before the Iowa caucuses that they don't actually decide the nomination. So this happens every 4 years.
Right.
There's a lot of focus on who it's going to be in Iowa, and that doesn't often translate into who the actual nominee is. So, all this excitement for Ron Paul in Iowa, and we'll see how much there actually is tomorrow. In the past, sometimes the grassroots excitement has translated. In the case of Mike Huckabee, sometimes it hasn't.
Right.
I remember Howard Dean very well. So before we get too carried away with whether he's mainstream or not, we have to see what happens. But, look, he's obviously got his quirks. He's obviously very authentic, and I think that's a lot of what people like about him.
Real quick, I want to ask you guys in one word to describe Iowa. Since you point out, Ann, that we put so much emphasis on this caucus there, what do you, in a word, call it, Ann?
What do we call Iowa?
What would you call? What would you describe? Irrelevant, the hot spot. What would you describe what we're watching?
Fascinating, but only one piece of the puzzle.
That's more than one. David, what do you have
I cheated.
David?
I think what we're going to see is Iowa doesn't really settle anything.
That's a sentence. And Mo, I'll give you the last one there.
Cold.
Very good. All right. I'm not sure if you mean cold toward Democrats right now or just cold in general toward this
just
process.
Cold.
Thank
just
you.
cold.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Ann, David, and Mo. We really appreciate it. And later in today's News Nation Gut Check, we'll zero in on people who say they are still undecided in Iowa.